So as a child, you learn these things and you accept them on faith. And I still have that faith, but as I got older, I came to it through intellect and through reading and putting things together in accounts, and then occurrences like in my own life. I mean, just recently they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
I've been reading about it, and I know that there's some contention, there's some discussion and debate about it, but they used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
And now they've changed that.
Yeah, they said no, it's back then.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating, because it's not paint. It's not, they don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
It wasn't, no.
A couple thousand years ago.
An intense light, I mean, atomic, to leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth.
Yeah.
And
it's wild. Pull that up. Pull the Shroud of Turin up.
Oh, yeah.
It's wild to look at because it's so interesting.
Oh, yeah. And you can see it, that it depicts a first century Hebrew male, because the hairstyle was from the first century, and a Hebrew hairstyle, that he was about 6 feet tall, that he was completely scourged all over his body. He was crucified. That's it there.
The one on the left is the one on the right is just like an artistic rendition.
AI recreation.
That's the face.
Yeah, click on that one. The face. Yeah, that's good enough. Get that large. That's fucking crazy.
Yeah. Scourged, beaten.
Yeah.
The wounds on the thorns, the hands, the feet, and the scourging, and the hairstyle was from the first century, and the pollens that they found in the cloth were from that region.
Yeah.
Also, the weave was a first century weave that was typical, and another guy, an archaeologist who I knew, who actually translated the Passion into Aramaic, told me that if you look close, you can see the image of a Tiberius coin marks on the eyes. Now, I don't know if that's real or not. I've never actually checked that, but that there's images of Tiberius on the coin.
So they would put the coins over the eyes?
Yeah. So that would date it. But they have now verified that it does actually go back to that time period. For a while, they were testing pieces that had been repaired in the 13th century, or you know. So.
What is the latest on that, Jamie? Can you see, like,
I was trying to get that. I have 2 different articles from within the last 6 months saying
the
opposite things. So
opposite, of course.
Dig into which one sounded the most accurate.
Well, it's such a crazy thing to even try to verify. What are you saying? You're saying that this is really the shroud that Jesus was covered in? So you're saying Jesus historically absolutely did exist, and we think that this is the shroud that covered him. That alone, people, incredulity, people's immediately their hackles raise, like, wait a minute, and they just instead of like looking at it objectively, they almost always want to look at it from a point of view of disproving it immediately, dismissing it immediately.
But that's that's science, isn't it? You have to sort of you play the devil's advocate, and that's okay. Go for it.
Are you aware of Graham Hancock?
Oh no.
Graham Hancock is he's sort of a historian that has a very he's got a series on Netflix. He's a fascinating guy, and his career started because he was investigating these accounts in Ethiopia of the Ark of the Covenant. Right. And that they believe the Ark of the Covenant is in this one church that's protected by all these monks that wind up getting cataracts and radiation disease and sickness. And they think that it's because they're protecting this Ark of the Covenant, this actual thing, that it's an actual physical thing that's there.
And if you touch it, you get zapped.
Yeah, and that even being in its presence fucks these people up.
Maybe. Who knows? I mean, it's got to be someplace, right? They buried it. They lost track of it.
Yeah.
But, man, it used to be. And all the stories are, if you even touched it, you fall over, because it was instructed electrically somehow.
Yeah, like, what is that? What's in there? Why is it giving people cancer if they're really protecting it?
I think it's the actual structure of the container it's in that is the problem. That's my thought on it. I could be wrong. But I think inside it, they have things from, like, when Moses was, like, manna and, for example, they say that that Golgotha, the place where the crucifixion happened, it's called Golgotha, the place of the skull, because that's where Adam's head is buried.
Really?
Yes, and that it's also perhaps the same place. And it tells you it's kind of in the same area where Abraham almost sacrifices Isaac.
Oh.
So it's interesting.
Yeah.
And it's and the cross, when in any artistic depiction, at the foot of the cross, underneath it is the skull, representing the skull of Adam.
Huh.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
That's the skull of Adam, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
Place of the skull, memory, myth, in the chapel of Adam.
What did you find on the Shroud of Turin, Jamie?
Both those articles just asked like one person, like one researcher thought it was, another researcher based off of their research said it wasn't.
Can you put it to the one that thought it was?
So the one who thought it was is like a
Does date to the
nuclear
time of
researcher.
Jesus. A nuclear researcher, Jesus
The
Christ.
other one was like a AI artist from Brazil.
Yeah.
So I don't know who has the most.
So it says, study
It's
published in
gonna
the
be-
journal Heritage. The authors conducted dating work on a sample from the shroud, coming to the conclusion that it may be a 2,000-year-old relic. The shroud, which has long been the subject of intense scrutiny, features a faint image of a man some believe is the body of Jesus miraculously imprinted onto the cloth. While the latest study does not discuss the question whether or not the artifact was indeed Jesus' burial shroud, specifically, the authors did find its age is roughly consistent with his time. Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, isn't the Smithsonian guy all for it? I don't know. Maybe that's him. I don't know. But, yeah. There's for and against. There's always been.
Yeah, always. But it's just...
But the image is like, come
Yeah,
on.
it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is pretty crazy. And the fact that they don't know how they made it is also pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's not a painting.
Nope.
And then not exactly sure how
No.
it even came about.
Yeah. It had to have been some kind of intense light.
Well, the thought was that even trying to replicate something like that today would be incredibly difficult to do.
Sure. It's like an X-ray vision. You know?
Yeah.
It's like an X-ray. That's what you really see it in the negative only.
Right.
You know, it's
Right.
crazy.
It's like a negative. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I buy it. But that's not the only reason I buy it. I mean, I think, there's other logical reasons why I believe. So,
Like what are those?
oh, okay. Stuff that happens in your own life. The results you get from actually appealing to a power greater than yourself, And, I mean, I don't think it's any secret. I am flawed in the fact that I am by nature born an alcoholic, right? I did drugs, I did alcohol, so, and there was nothing that could stop me from doing that. Nothing. So I was really kind of you're on a downhill run. So I regard the fact that I was able to appeal to something greater than myself to help me and actually stop me doing that. I think that's a miracle. It is. For me, it is. And for many. So...
Well, that is the thing about AA, right? It's a part of the whole process is appealing to a higher power.
Sure. It's a
And-
spiritual program.
yeah.
Because you're suffering your spiritual malady,
Yeah.
So it's a spiritual cure. And that's the essence, I think, of why it works. Because you can't explain it otherwise. I mean, you kind of can. But I think what you're being asked to do is to think about other people and other things more than yourself, because it's kind of an ego disease.
Yeah.
So if you...
That is the problem with addiction, right? It's very narcissistic.
Very
Because you're
narcissistic.
constantly thinking about yourself and what you need. I need a drink. I need a bump. I need I need something.
Sure, I need...
Yeah.
And no matter what you need, it's never going to be enough.
Right. Right.
So you actually have to appeal to something outside that you consider bigger and better than yourself, which instantly kind of pushes you more in the direction of humility.
Yes.
Because because you're not the center of the universe anymore.
Right.
And that you can't do it. And the first step in any of that sort of stuff is accepting that you are powerless over it. That's the most powerful step you can do, is that you're powerless. When you realize that, you're like, okay,
Yeah.
there's fuck all I can do about this. I have to appeal to something better than me. And that to me is a miracle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a very uniquely human thing, the ability to course correct, and also just the concept of addiction in the first place.
Sure.
You know, it's a very uniquely human thing that we all know that there's dark roads our mind can go down, and then we wonder, like, what is the purpose of these dark thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
What is the purpose of this destructive behavior that we're all prone to in some way, shape, or form?
What is the purpose of everything?
Yeah.
I mean, like, really?
Right.
I mean, why am I here? What's the meaning of this?
Yeah.
And I'm looking for purpose, and what is it we're here for? I think, you know, we have to leave some stuff, but you have to leave some good stuff. You can leave plenty of bad stuff, you know, and it's and we're all prone that way. I often think about, you know, the human race as a whole. You know, you think about guys like, you know, Stalin or Hitler or Chairman Mao, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be sharing a cell in the afterlife with those guys. You know?
Right.
I don't know where I'll be on the ladder, but
Depends on how you end up, right?
well, that's it.
Yeah.
It really is. It's like, you know, and we're allowed to make mistakes, and we do. We are so flawed, and I'm more flawed than anyone, you know. But it's something that I think, and it's pretty safe to say I'm in the third act now. You're in act 2, right? Gesundheit. But I'm in the third act, man. So you have to think about the other side. You have to think about what comes next. Is there a next? Yes, there is. I believe there is. And I think it's depends on how you live now. And the beauty of believing is that even for your transgressions, you can be forgiven. And you can be redeemed. But it's all up here,
Right.
you know.
It's the true acceptance and understanding of what you've done and what you should do.
Sure. You have to
And
look
how-
at yourself honestly.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely honestly. You have to be able to accuse yourself and understand that it's a great deal of mercy involved in the fact that I believe that God sent his son down to tell us, okay, I'm going to ransom you people from your fallen nature, and I'll give you a roadmap on how to do it. And people do it. There's even people that do it that I've never even heard of it. You know, some guy in the jungle someplace, I'm sure.
Right.
You know? Because the Creator is above the law. I mean, it's an interesting fact to note that the first canonized saint, you know who it was?
No.
The first ever confirmed canonization as a saint was Dismas. You know who Dismas was?
No.
He was the thief on the cross next to Jesus.
Oh.
And he says to him, you're going to be okay. This day, you'll be with me. Unbaptized, criminal, all that stuff. So
Wow.
the lawmaker is above the law. So there's a lot of mercy.
What about people that never experience Christianity? What about the
That's what I'm saying.
uncontacted
Yeah,
people?
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Some
Yeah.
guy in the jungle.
Yeah.
It's been known that it's called invincible ignorance because they don't know what the truth is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's possible that they can be saved as well. You know.
So, what are your thoughts on evolution?
Wow. The Darwin thing?
Yeah.
I don't really go for it.
No?
Yeah. Ice Age, dinosaurs, you know. What did they turn into? I mean, things became extinct at some point. I don't think I was some kind of legless thing that crawled out of the ocean. I don't think I came from that. I think I was created.
Do you think other things were legless things that came out of the ocean? Do you think like multi-celled organisms came out of single-celled organisms, and there was some sort of a natural selection and random mutation, and it led to everything else but us?
Sure, look at gain of function.
Right.
You can make stuff happen. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure stuff did happen. But I think it's all part of creation. I think it's all ordered. I think anything left to itself without some kind of intelligence behind it will devolve into chaos. And so that there has to be some big intelligence that orchestrates everything. Not that we don't have chaos in the world, but I think that's our own making.
But what do you think separates us from all the other creatures?
Wow. I think we have a soul. We're created with a soul. And, I went to a restaurant last night. It was a steakhouse in Austin. And it was interesting because all the pictures on the wall are pictures of animals that look resentful, like cows and steers staring at you, looking angry as you rip into a steak. But I just believe we are higher than those creatures because we have a soul, we have an intellect above theirs, and we aspire to higher things. We have aspirations.
Right.
And this is part of why people drink and smoke and do dope and all this kind of stuff, is because they're looking for a spiritual experience. They're looking for, like they actually call alcohol spirits. I mean,
right.
They're looking for something higher. And I think we all have that yearning in that we want to be happy, and we want to be at peace, and we want everything to be hunky-dory. So there's this yearning inbuilt in all of us for that, to aspire to something greater. And that's why we're inspired by stories, I think, because it's like, hero stories. Joseph Campbell's stuff, The Hero with a Thousand Faces and stuff. It's like these stories inspire us. I was at a party the other day in Tennessee, and you think, Tennessee, what's going to happen there? It's going to be squeal like a pig. No. Man, there's some people live in Tennessee.
Sure.
But like amazing people. And I found myself in a conversation with 4 tier 1 dudes, all of who did something extraordinary. And it was that Tom Slattersley guy. It was the Black Hawk Down guy. There was Sean Ryan, you probably heard of this guy.
Friend of his.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
There was a guy called Christian Craighead. You know who that guy is?
No.
Whoa. And then there was Eddie. They wrote a book about him.
Eddie Gallagher?
Gallagher, yeah. Eddie Gallagher. I was talking to 4 of these guys at the same time. And I didn't know who do you even talk to? But their stories are amazing. Especially, and the one guy I ended up talking to was an SAS guy, British SAS. And he just looks like a bank teller. But he did something extraordinary and incredibly brave, and with no regard for himself, only regard for other people. And it was like, whoa, you hear these stories, and it's sort of just like, it pumps you up. You think, could I do that? Could I be that person? I don't know if I could. I don't, in a way, I don't even want to ever find out, because you have to be in an extreme situation.
Right.
But hearing about other people and how they behave in situations that are difficult is very inspiring. So, it's, there's so many of those stories around, and through history.
Well, that's another unique thing about human beings, is that we learn from others in a very extraordinary way. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the reasons why we like stories.
Yeah.
Why we like myths and fables, because there's lessons you can apply to your own life without having to actually go through those things.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I made a film about that guy, Desmond Doss. I don't know if you saw it. It was like Hacksaw Ridge. It was this film, and it was about a medic who figured, so much killing going on, he's going to go into the battlefield and save lives. And he didn't have a weapon. And he was in the worst place on earth. And he got a Congressional Medal of Honor because he kept going in to the worst place possible and dragging wounded guys out with no regard for himself. I mean, who does that kind of stuff?
Right.
And over again. He didn't just do it once. He did it hundreds of times. He finally got, hit with shrapnel and a bunch of other stuff, but he lived to be an old man. But wow. And it was just pure faith, So, those guys, those kind of stories inspire the hell out of me. Anyway.
So, back to this idea of evolution. So, do you believe that evolution exists in animals? Or do you think there's some sort of a natural selection